It usually starts with me wandering. So I'm either deliberately looking for something, walking around my garden or just walking through the neighborhood, trying to find some inspiration, or I'm doing something else entirely and all of a sudden I notice something that's interesting or exciting that I may have seen a million times before, but just hadn't really thought about until that point, or hadn't really recognized until I saw it in that way. So just try to remember when you're looking around to see the world abstractly. So don't look for a specimen, don't look for a named object. As soon as you name it, there's a certain amount of prejudice against what you think it should look like, how you think it should be. And if you're considering it abstractly, just look for color, shapes. If you look at it that way, you're a lot more open to the possibility of that form. And I think you're reading it more purely. We know that being open with people allows us to see them more deeply. And I think that's true with these plants as well. Sometimes it's a really flashy thing. You know, it's hard to resist those beautiful, bright flowers in the landscape. And sometimes it's just something unusual that all of a sudden the light hits it in the right way, or you happen to be coming at it from the right angle, or your mind just happens to be in the right place that you recognize it. And then it becomes an entirely different thing, which is exciting. One of the things that you'll hear drawing instructors say a lot is that we don't teach people to draw, we teach people to look. And I have a couple of exercises that I really like to do to help me to further explore the object that I think I might be using for my drawing. One of those exercises is a slow contour drawing. And I love this kind of drawing because it encourages the person who's drawing to look not just at the outline or the flat part of the form, but the lines that work in the interior of the form that give that form dimension. As soon as you place one line inside and overlapping another, you've created dimension. And I think that these plants often have a lot to offer us in terms of line, in addition to color, and shape, which is where we tend to go with these plants. We tend to go directly to shape. So I like to explore that line a little bit, look at the subtleties that this plant is offering. And with a slow contour, what you're doing is you're taking your drawing implement, in this case I've got a charcoal pencil, and you are drawing slowly and looking at the same time. So it's almost as if you are tracing the form with your pencil as you trace it with your eye. So your eye and your pencil, or charcoal pencil in this case, need to be working synchronously. Now that's not the way we usually look at things. Usually we get a whole bunch of different pictures and then we create this image in our head. In this case, I'm asking you to simply look at that one spot and to wander. So it's the same thing we did when we were looking for our plants. We were wandering and trying to discover. And when you wander, when you walk, sometimes you notice something off the path and you step away. So do not feel when you're doing these drawings like you have to complete a petal before you move to the next one. If you're drawing a petal and all of a sudden you see another line that's of interest, follow that line. Don't feel like you have to worry about the product. And this is the way that we discover unusual and unique things. Flowers are lovely to draw. They're dangerous too, because what happens is we get a very good, firm concept of what a flower should look like, and then we tend to just stick with that and draw kind of nondescript, uninteresting shapes that tell us, yeah, flower. But if you're really wanting to express what each individual flower tells us, you need to look closely. And that's where this contour line drawing slow contour line drawing really comes in handy. And it feels uncomfortable. It's not really a normal way to look at things, but it's an excellent exercise. And oftentimes you get some really interesting, unique, sometimes very beautiful results with contour line drawings. The other exercise that I like to do to sort of get to know my object is a pressure, a modeled pressure drawing. And I do this using the side of a dusty drawing implement. So in this case, I have just black charcoal. And what you do when you do a model drawing, these are much faster than the slow contour, you respond tactily to what you're seeing. So you're pushing in for the spaces that are further away, and you're relaxing for the spaces that are closer. And in doing that, you get a sense of the dimension of the paper. So our paper's always going to be flat, but if we start doing this pressure thing, our brain connects with it in a way that there is dimension, which is really key here to giving that illusion of depth on the page. So I push where I'm in the darker spaces, I relax where I'm in the lighter spaces, and I try to get a sense of the topography of the form, as if I'm moving in and out of space. And this way, I can connect with the object in terms of value, lights and darks. And that is really, really essential when we start to introduce color to what we're doing here. I actually really, really love these drawings because I think they have, because it's not something that's actually really comfortable for me. It's difficult for me to relax in this way and to keep the lines out of the mix. And so in this way, I connect in this more subtle value way that when you step back, really give you something beautiful to look at. So after doing some wandering and maybe a little sketching, I've clipped a couple of flowers from my yard, the tree peony and the allium. Now, normally what I try to do is work with those even over several days, and just as they change, I'd follow that change in the drawing a little bit and kind of let it evolve, notice some new things. It can bring a little bit of excitement and life to it. But in this case, the tree peony specifically, from this morning when I was out drawing it to this afternoon, the span of like 3 hours, it is really fading. And not just fading color-wise, but fading, I think it's gonna lose its leaves or its petals. So I've taken a couple of photos, and I'm gonna keep those photos just in case if I come back out here and if the peony has completely lost its petals, so there's nothing there to draw, I can revert to those photos. Ideally, I like to draw the forms as they are. So I've cut a piece of Arches N2K paper. I measured on 2 sides, then I fold and crease that and put a little bit of water on the fold and then tear it. So I get a nice softer edge versus the harshness of a cut edge. One side is a cold pressed, so it's got a little bit of texture to it, and the other side is hot pressed. And so you could see it. It's actually a really versatile paper. You can use either side. I usually prefer the hot pressed, but I went ahead and put the cold pressed side up just for a little bit of a challenge. And I've clipped it at the top with some T-pins, and then I put a few thumbtacks in the sides here so that it wouldn't curl up some more. It's going to stay nice and flat, but I don't want any holes in it. I want to be able to just take it down when I'm done and have it be ready to go. When I start my drawing, I like to work with a single dark color. In this case, I'm going to use a Schminke brand Prussian Blue, which is a lovely color. It gives you a lot of the qualities of black without some of the issues with dullness that black can sometimes bring when we start to work in color. The value of working with this single non-color color is that we can lay in line, value, shape, all of the super important things in a drawing that are sometimes lost if you just dive right in to the flashiness that is color. So in this case, I can give my drawing a really good, interesting foundation. In some ways, it's the best part of the drawing. So I've completed that linear phase of the underdrawing, the one that references the contour line drawings that we made. And I'm going to step into a phase of the drawing where we reference the model drawing. And to do that, I need to select a few colors to work with. It's really tempting to just jump in and grab as many colors as you can to get started. And I'm working with a lot of different pastels. I have a big stockpile of pastels. I work primarily with Schminke, Unison, Sennelier, some Diane Townsend, some Rembrandt, and then just kind of your standard Blick brand and Alpha Color brand pastels. And these are all chalk pastels. So they are traditional pastels, not oil. They all have their own qualities, and each color within the brand is different as well. What I like to do is limit that choice to a light group of colors, a medium group of colors, and a dark group of colors. So we're starting with tints, the light, tones, the medium or gray, shades, the darker. And that way I can consider color in a way that is different than just the actual hue. I can think about it in terms of light and dark. It's going to give those colors more depth when we get to the final drawing, when we start adding and responding to color. So my palette here, to begin with, you can see here's the blue that I've been using. And then I'm thinking about the hues I have, the colors I have. And so I have a couple of violets in here, and then a couple of reds and some yellows and oranges here. I'm considering those hues, but they are not the primary thing. And ideally, these colors are not going to be isolated to the flower that references them. When you're working in terms of modeling, you want to remember that the technique is really important. That hard, heavy pull and that soft, light pull are extremely, extremely relevant to the way things are put on the page. In my case, I don't care if a little white shows through. And I want to make sure that I'm in areas that I want saturated, because now we're kind of talking about color. I'm pushing harder, pressing that color in. I try to avoid smudging early on. I just let the color kind of exist as it's put down on the paper. So a little bit of that texture. And then where it's less saturated, I release the pressure a little. I reduce that pressure. And so within the realm of that one color, you're getting a variety of values or saturation levels. I do rub in the drawing using a piece of very fine steel wool. And that is super, super helpful to creating a tone on the page that's soft. And I like the effect I get better than when I just rub it with my hand or with a towel or a chamois or something like that. You might have noticed that I have been adding to my palette quite a bit. It's really hard for me to block in and then draw. I tend to just kind of start with that blocking in and then build more and more surface. So my expanded palette now looks something like this. And I really just get there by grabbing pastels as I go along. I try to mix what I can, and I kind of wander back and forth to the pastel box, throwing them in here and filling it up. You have to be really careful, because if you get too much in there, it becomes a little overwhelming. I like to work the subject and the background simultaneously. In a way, I mean, I always feel like you should consider both of those, but I like to work them in a way that they move forward and backwards. So sometimes I like to bring that background forward, see what happens when its presence becomes stronger than the presence of the object around it. You have to remind yourself to keep looking. And at the same time, sometimes you have to allow yourself to be distracted in a way that references the object, but is something beyond that. And that's where you really plug into the language of art. And you become more deliberate about what it is that you're doing. When you get into that state, that's kind of that artistic fugue state that is really elusive, but when you're there, you are no longer translating. And instead, you are speaking in that pure language. You're seeing that object in a way that's so different